All right, so good morning, YouTube. Um, I'm making this video as a result of a comment that I received and also to kind of clarify what I mean by upper lower. So, when it comes to how I train, it's very easy to see that I'm just doing full body all the time. Whenever I show people my programs and I tell people, like, oh, it's my lower body day, and then they see barbell rows, they're like, oh, you do full body. And I mean, yeah, if you want to be very semantic about it, but the reason why I want to bring this up is just because when it comes to how you do your split, trying to be so rigid and so strict is just going to complicate your training. So oftentimes we kind of create these self-limiting thoughts as far as what we can or can't do, as if there are some hard and fast rules about programming. And no, that's not the case at all. When it comes to programming, and when it comes to programming with especially because I make a lot of videos talking about programming on this channel, these are recommendations. These are things that I want you to keep in mind, or things I want you to take into consideration when you make certain decisions. So when you are training, writing your own programs and stuff like that, or when you look at a different program that you are trying to glean information out of, or even use as a base or template for your own training program, these are some things that I want you to think about. So let's get into the video. Okay. So first off, I want to kind of talk about my favorite splits as far as training. So if you are using a barbell, if you are aiming to get stronger, which I hope you are, and you are implementing strength-based strategies, then I really do recommend an upper lower and a full body for most people. If you are doing something that is a bit more, let's say, bodybuilder friendly, where you're doing only 4 movements a day or something around 4 movements a day, and maybe one of them is a hard lift and then everything else is kind of like more machine work or more isolation work, then yeah, sure, you can do 5-6 days a week. And that's not a horrible way to train, but it's not really what I personally would recommend. It's not something that I'm personally comfortable doing myself out of preference, but not because I don't believe it doesn't work. But here's the thing: if you are including the barbell, and you are including variations of the big three, and all of these things, I do think it is necessary for you to use either an upper lower or a full body. So when it comes to the traditional upper day, this means you're literally hitting everything above the waist. So you're hitting your chest, your shoulders, your back, your biceps, and your triceps. So side delts are also included in that. Rear delts are included in that. If you want to make things even more difficult, you can even think of it as like putting in your forearm work or your neck work. These are all things that can go onto a upper body day. But here's the thing: when you run into that issue, the biggest issue, sorry, let me silence that. The biggest issue is that this day will now be significantly longer than your lower body day. So from a time perspective, from like a just trying to manage your time better, it doesn't really work in the way that you think it would. So that's one. The next thing is recoverability. So and when it comes to training economy, right? There are two resources that you have in finite amounts every time you go into the gym: time and recovery. Now, if you are a young guy, let's say maybe 18 to 24-ish, and this can vary because I'm 24 and I'm busy as all hell. You probably have a lot of time to spend in the gym, especially if you're like, high school age. Like, let's say you're starting working out at like 15 or 15, 14, and then you're going from there. You probably have a lot of time on your hands and you spend a lot of time in the gym. So maybe this isn't that important to you. But as you continue to get older, more responsibilities come up. But also, the stronger you get, the more you have to take into consideration these other things. So this is why when it comes to how I set up an upper body day, that I do chest, upper back, delts, mainly through like, let's say, front and side delt training, and triceps. Those are the main things that I put around in that day. Now, I do deviate from this because I might even put in lat work on this day, just because I kind of prefer, or I do put a higher training emphasis when it comes to the lats. But you can also supplement this with additional chest work, additional work, depending on what muscle you're trying to prioritize at that point in time. Biceps are optional on this day if they are a priority at that wherever you're at. So let's say this is what I would recommend being a staple no matter what. But then let's say you have you're trying to build up your chest, have a second chest movement. Let's say you're trying to build up your upper back and traps, have a second upper back and trap movement. So this is just kind of to help spread things out. Now you can also include those other muscles that I didn't really include for the simple reason that I don't really train them directly. This is partly due to my background as a strength oriented lifter, but when it comes to things like forearm, your neck. Now, I don't really train neck at all, so my neck is pretty small. I think the general like guideline or standard is that your neck should be as wide as the widest part of your chin, which I don't meet that criteria. So you could say that I have a small neck, but at the same time, I don't really care. So when it came to developing the size of my neck, if you do think that this is an appropriate size neck, it just came from heavy pulls. So barbell rows, trap bar deadlifts, things of that nature. I didn't really do direct training. Same thing when it comes to the forearm. Like if you think this is a sizable, meaty forearm, that was me trying to flex, not trying to be cute. Then all this just came from those same movements in addition to some curls. Now, when it comes to forearm training, I think my favorite forearm exercises are going to be reverse curls. Reason being is that after you do a reverse curl, you can superset that with the wrist curls, and you're already in that position. I like that movement. I like that superset a lot. But yeah, you can throw in those movements, but these are the staples. Reason being is because just by having your training organized in this way will already alleviate the amount of stress and distribute the amount of exercises that you do versus on an upper day and a lower day a lot better. So on a lower body day, you're usually just doing quads, glutes, hamstrings, and calves, and then you're done. The reason why I don't really like this is because you have all these exercises that are typically found on an upper body day that are making that day a lot longer than it needs to be, while this one is just abnormally short. So like I said, you can just distribute things a bit better and go from there. So I really do recommend that on a lower body day, you do put in your lats and you put in your biceps at least. Now, depending on the movement, the exercise selection, there are certain things that just make more sense than others. So let's say you have a deadlift focused day. It makes sense to do barbell rows. Part of the reason is because that is going to be the day where your lower back is experiencing the highest amount of stress. So rather than putting the barbell row somewhere else and then possibly having that affect your performance on the deadlift, it's better to just put them one after the other. And then so that way when you do get your rest days and your recovery days, you're able to recover from that stress a lot better. So there's that, right? Then of course for quads, like let's say squats or things of that nature, I personally think that you do benefit from a decompression effect, even if it's just placebo, even if it's just minor or acute. I do think that it does help out with recovery at least a little bit. So that's why I like doing lat work on lower body days. But the biggest thing is because of that training economy that I mentioned. You only have so much time in the gym and you only have so much time recoverability as well. So if you just focus on putting all your work and all your effort onto one day, and you are now just burnt out and fried, and then you go into the next day, even if it has less work to it, just because you weren't able to recover to your best potential, now you kind of shot yourself in the foot and your next day is a bit worse. The other thing that I don't really like as far as the lower body day is this. When it comes to most people transitioning into different styles of training, while there's nothing... Okay, even if science backs up a bro split, I just don't like it. I'm not going to recommend it just because practically speaking, I don't really buy into it, because yes, if you are able to equate the amount of volume, equate the intensity, equate the proximity to failure, equate everything as you would to every other split, then yes, there would be no differences, but I think that's a pretty big if. So I'm not going to be recommending a body part split anytime soon, but here's the thing. With a body part split, a lot of people find a body part split, find that it is lacking, and then they have to move around things and then try different styles of training. Let's say they go from a body part split to an upper lower. They already hate leg day, and now you give them two of them, and they're pretty hard days. So that makes it kind of difficult from there. So there's also this mental aspect to it where, certain muscle groups that you do like are kind of attached to the lower body day so as to not make you skip it. I kind of do this with some of my clients. It's kind of like, vegetables or trying to give your dog a pill. How do you give a dog a pill? You put it around peanut butter or something like that, right? So if you want to increase the amount of vegetables you eat, you try to like eat it with as much protein and other food is on your plate, so that way to kind of hide it if you aren't that fond of vegetables. Well, it's things like that, right? So there's like a mental aspect to it as well. But here's the biggest part of it: it doesn't impact your recovery in a negative way, in my opinion, and it doesn't impact your performance in a negative way, in my opinion. So when it comes to upper lower, being strict with it is one of the worst things you can do, because you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot and you're going to get into analysis by paralysis, just because, oh my god, there's so many things I need to do on this one day, but I wish I just had another day where I could split it up. And yes, you do have another day to do it. It's called a lower day. So you might be asking, why do I do it like this? Well, why do you do a push-pull legs? If you do a push-pull legs, you are training each muscle group just twice a week, right? So with a push-pull legs, you're training 6 days a week, but you're training every muscle group only 2 times a week. Why not consolidate that and make it an upper lower? Then you get 3 extra days of rest. You can dedicate these to other things: a cardio day, a day at the park, a day with friends, family, and other things that matter in life. That's one way of going about things. Or you can dedicate it to another part of your fitness, whether it be cardio, boxing, a sport, something of that nature, right? So if you take apart a push-pull legs and just kind of like distribute things in a way that I mentioned, so not being afraid of like splitting up your pull work on both the push and leg days, then you have just created what I consider to be a really good upper lower. So the back is a very resilient muscle. Don't be afraid of training it very hard. Don't be afraid of giving it a lot of volume. So I know it is stupid. Like, it is stupid to think that you need to row twice as much in terms of volume as your bench press, but I don't think that it's stupid to say that your pushes and your pulls should have a 1-to-2 ratio. So, but here's the thing: when I say pull, I don't just mean like rows, deadlifts, or things like that. I mean things like I factor in things like lat pull downs, seated cable rows, rear delts, so face pulls and other rear delt exercises. I consider those in the calculus of my pull push ratio. So whether I'm doing push-ups, bench press, overhead press, or dips, I'm balancing these things out with things like that aren't just in the same plane and the same intensity. Because while it would be impressive to barbell row the same amount of volume and intensity that I bench, it's not really the same, because the stabilization requirements are different. But like I said, while I do recommend that you do pull more than you push, I'm not advocating that you try to do that with pull-ups, barbell rows, and these big heavy movements. I want you to do it with a variety of your movements. So pull-ups and lat pull downs, barbell rows and machine or dumbbell rows, face pulls, and whatever other rear delt exercises should all kind of factor into that. Also, biceps can recover quickly. And here's the thing: for you guys who do push pull legs and whatever other split that you guys do, I know for a fact you guys do like anywhere between 2 to 3 different curls twice a week. And my thing is this: why then is it so absurd to do one curl 4 times a week? So if you are going to go off those studies that say when volume is equated and everything of that nature, and the final analysis, when you look at the numbers, it's going to be the same. If you do 2 kinds of curls twice a week, that's 4 different kinds of curls, and then you split it up in 2 different days. You can do that with an upper lower as well, where you train biceps every day, especially if biceps are a priority for you. It's something that you really want to build up, and it's something you want to hit hard and get that frequency in for. That can be a benefit. That can be a tool that you use. It's not the end all be all, but it's a worthy tool to keep in mind. And the final reason why I put in certain movements on each day, even if it doesn't really make sense, is because the movements define the day. So let's say on a lower body day, right? Well, I use the example of the deadlift. Where should it make the most sense that a barbell row should go? In my opinion, it should go after the deadlift, just because you already have the implement set up, you are already using your lower back, and you are using a lift that does have carryover to that movement. So it just makes sense to kind of put it there. So this is kind of like an example, upper lower. So let's say on a bench press day, I do bench press, then seated rows, then overhead press and chin ups. I superset those 2 personally, and then I'll do like some other then like some delt work or something of that nature. But this is just an example, right? So bench, seated row, overhead press, chin ups, skull crushers, and close grip bench. So you have your back, you have your back, you have your lats, chest, shoulders, and triceps. I don't put biceps on this day as a personal preference, but you can put it in there. Then on the lower body day, let's say you have a squat day, and then your second movement will be some type of deadlift variation, or if you have a deadlift day, then your second movement will be a squat variation. Then you can follow that up with barbell rows or chin-ups. You can even move this up a little bit, so you actually have the barbell row or chin-up after to kind of split up the squat and deadlift work. I would kind of recommend that as just to kind of like give that part of your body a break. And unless you're doing rows, of course, like rows should happen after the deadlift. But anyway, then you can do additional quads, hams, or glute work. I would recommend just choosing one, maybe two, depending on where you are in your training and everything like that. These are just general recommendations, but it's just kind of to give you insight into what I mean by upper lower. When I say upper lower, I don't mean a strict upper lower. I don't mean only upper body muscles on this day, and I don't mean only lower body on this day, just because it's an inefficient use of time. It's and it probably would negatively impact you when you are working with something like the deadlift, if that is something that you are training with as far as your goals. Like if you do have a strength goal as far as the deadlift goes, and you try to stick with only doing that with this, I don't think it's going to work all that well for you. And I do think that because different muscles do recover in different ways and or different rates, that I think you can benefit from playing around with it a bit more. So this was a comment that I received talking about one of the programs that I mentioned or created. It's a free program, so I'm going to kind of be going over that in this video just because this was actually the comment that made me want to make this video. So why do you have bicep curls on both the overhead press and squat day? So on this training split, it's a movement, it's kind of like a movement split rather than a body part split. So you have a bench day, a squat day, an overhead press day, and a deadlift day. So the reason why I kind of like doing it this way is because back day is going to be present on all of them. You're going to be working the antagonistic side of each, the antagonistic muscle associated with the main lift of that day. And then you're going to be doing necessary accessories. So that's kind of like that, why I like that split. So you are doing direct bicep work 4 times a week, 2 of which are workouts that happen 1 day apart. Isn't that counterproductive for growth? No, the biceps do recover quickly. I don't think, like, unless you are experiencing significant like soreness as a result of doing one bicep exercise per day for like three to 4 sets, then maybe you can like put them together. But generally speaking, I never really find that to be the case. And also, when it comes to these smaller muscle groups, like I do think something approximating like nucleus overload, whether that is a valid training methodology or whatnot, I actually do think that here it does work pretty well. So no, you're not going to hinder your growth all that much. You're not going to overwork your bicep just by doing one exercise for 3 to 4 sets every day. Like, especially because there are still rest days in the program. You're going to have that, like, if with the program that he's referencing, you have a rest day on Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. So you're not going to just completely destroy your arms and overwork your arms with that. Overworking your muscles takes a lot. So there's that. I'd assume if you hit your biceps on overhead press day that they're already fatigued and damaged going into squat day. I mean, yes, but there's a couple things with this. For one, you're not doing the same type of curl. You're not doing the same amount of volume and intensity with that type of curl. So usually what I'll do is like, I'll do a barbell curl on one day, and then bicep, and then like a machine curl, or a less fatiguing curl, maybe even dumbbell on another day. So I actually would do barbell curl on Monday, machine curl on Tuesday, dumbbell curl on Thursday, and then machine curl again on Friday. That's kind of how I would go about things, just because it would kind of it allows me to get that volume, it allows me to get that frequency without hindering the recovery process, as he mentions later into the question. Because when it comes to the biceps, I feel like he's kind of thinking that if you are not progressing in performance on your bicep curl every single time you do a bicep curl, then you're not getting growth. So what I would do is, like, I would compare your direct bicep curl to the same movement. So if your barbell curl is going up 1 week, or if your barbell curl is, let's say, 3 sets of 8 with 50 pounds, and then the next week is 3 sets of 8 with 55 pounds, that's good. But just because because that's a week apart. But then let's say on that day you do your bicep curls, and then on the next day you do your bicep curls again, and then you feel like, oh, it's not that good. It just that's a sign that you're not growing or you're overworking. In my opinion, I don't really buy into that. So doing direct bicep work just seems unusual to me, and that's because I'm assuming that you probably come from a body part split. You probably come from someone who tells you that all your upper body movements should be on this day, and then you're so afraid to overtrain that you aren't, how do I say this politely? You're so afraid to overtrain, or you're so afraid to kind of like color outside the lines, that you are not going to, I don't know, like, I'm not trying to mischaracterize the person or their intention, because like I said, like, this is just more out of curiosity for them. But don't be so afraid of this. Like, that's all I want to say. Like, don't be so afraid. Also, what is the purpose of the row/shrug variation on the lower body squat day? That's an upper body movement. So why is it being done on a lower body day when the day right before already hit upper body with pull-ups and upright row? Once again, won't this be counterproductive for recovery purposes? No, because the back is more than just one big, like, all or nothing muscle. So when it comes to the row/shrug variation on the squat day, part of that is because, like I said, let's look at the deadlift. The deadlift has a weighted stretch component when it comes to that movement, but where does it go most of the time? On lower body days. So here it's just like, I'm sure he wants like a more scientific question answer to this, but all I will say is this: no, it's not going to be counterproductive for recovery purposes. The back is a very resilient muscle. On one day you're training it more lat focused, on another day you can train it more upper back focused. I recommend this partly due to balance out pushes and pulls, which in my opinion is actually better in the long term for recovery, just because you're actually able to split up hard efforts throughout the week. If you do a really hard workout where you're super strict with all your upper body movements on one day, you're going to be a lot more tired than if you were able to split up that work over 2 days. So that's why that's there as well. And then also, like I said, the back is a very resilient muscle. You can train it. So let's say one way of going about it is, you do, on upper body days, you do horizontal pulls. On lower body days, you only do vertical pulls. That's one way to go about things, and I think that's a very good way to start. But yeah, if recovery is the issue, one thing I'm going to say is this. This is going to be the most irresponsible piece of advice I'm going to give, but it's one that I feel like people are going to use, mess up, and then learn more from it than if they just heard the right answer from the start. And that is, don't be so afraid to overtrain that you just end up undertraining. So I know some people with inner demons or whatever are going to take that advice, and then they're going to burn themselves out, and then as a result they're going to find out where their middle point is. Because I can tell you where the middle point is, and that's spreading things out. But unless you kind of have that knowledge where people learn from their mistakes a lot more than they do from their successes. So I'm going to be making that recommendation. Don't be so afraid of overtraining that you just undertrain. This is not even an example of overtraining. If you do, let's say you did barbell bench pressing every single day, yeah, that's an overtraining. If you squat every single day and you squat heavy every single day, that can definitely constitute overtraining. In my opinion, overtraining is not just doing an upper body movement on a lower body day, and overtraining is not doing bicep curls throughout the entire week. I don't really think that's I wouldn't categorize that as overtraining. So that's what I would leave you with there. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. If you would like to work with me and make a custom workout program for you, all that is available on my website. And I'd be more than happy to help you with your strength and physique goals. My name is Cross the King, stancestrength.com. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.